Hi guys, we're back with our Byzantine era. And just to recap, when we were here last, we did the Vienna Genesis. And now we're going to continue to move on in our Byzantine era to a city in Italy. So I'm going to actually go back to the map really quickly and let you know where Ravenna is. Ravenna is right up here in this little area, like right here. Okay, so Ravenna, we're looking right up in this little area, right just north of the Adriatic, okay? Northwest of the Adriatic. So in this added area, okay? But at the time, it was still, yeah. All right, here we go. San Vitale. This is dedicated to Saint Vitalis of Milan. He was martyred here in the town of Ravenna for practicing Christianity when it was not legal yet. And so once he was, martyred, and then once, more importantly, once Christianity was legalized, then, they were able to build this church. So, a couple of quick things. We're dealing with a place in Italy that is not going to feel like every other Roman thing because it is heavily influenced by the Byzantine era. We're looking at like a serious construction of local brick and marble that has then a stone veneer over top of it, and then mosaic. So we see mosaic again. Those little tiny tiles that we saw with the Alexander floor and other things that were made of mosaic, where we use these little teeny tiny tiles to show a picture. And we're talking about literally millions of tiles, little teeny tiny millions of tiles. So this is technically what we call a martyrium, martyrium. And a martyrium is a structure that is built at the site of the death of a martyr. And so it is not only just a church, but it's also sort of marks the space where they were willing to die for their faith. Okay, so that's a new term that we haven't seen before, because we really haven't had a lot of people dying for their faith up to this point. We see some arches, which are indicative of Roman construction. We see all these beautiful arched windows. We love these arched windows. And then we see this, which is an early buttress. And a buttress's job is to transfer weight. You may have heard the term flying buttress. This is not a flying buttress. This is just a buttress. The weight comes down from this roof down here into the side wall here. And then the weight is distributed part down to this place, part here, and then part here. So it's a way to distribute weight so that like walls don't collapse and that roofs don't fall in. Okay, so this area is Byzantine from like the 4th century through the 15th century. We're talking Italy in through the Slavic areas like Croatia and areas like that. And it was once the capital of the Western Roman Empire. As Catholicism, Christianity takes over, Ravenna becomes the capital of the Western Roman Empire. And it becomes a really important place for the emperor and for his wife. We're dealing with a beautiful, beautiful construction. It's octagonal. It's an 8-sided building. So that's interesting. And some of the exterior brick, a lot of the exterior brick is spolia taken from Roman buildings. And you're dealing with a large octagon at the bottom and a much smaller octagon at the top and lots of windows. Why are there so many windows? Because the inside is completely covered with mosaic. And when I say completely covered, I mean completely covered. I'm holding off for a second because I don't want you to get distracted. So, we're looking at an unusual construction. Remember, I just taught you about Santa Sabina, where we're looking at that basilica construction where it's long and the apse is at the one end. This is important for a couple of reasons, this church. It has those early buttresses. They're not flying buttresses. They're just plain buttresses. But it has early buttresses. It has a ton of windows, and it is what we call centrally planned. Okay, what does centrally planned mean? It means it's in a circle. Sorry, I had to take a drink. So that's really important that this is sort of, this is the seat of the Western Empire. This is the capital for Justinian, Emperor Justinian and his wife. We see these really cool Roman arches, and we see the 8 sides, and we see it just is, it's such an important church. And so let's look inside. Okay, this is your floor plan. And so what you're looking at is it's an octagon, and it's open, and the apse is over here with 2 little tiny chapels on either side of the apse. And so what's really important there is what you see is that the apse is at one edge of the octagon, and then your entrance, you come in here, and you can see, no matter where you're standing, you can see the apse. You'll see that there's also what's called a set of double columns or a double colonnade. We saw this in the Basilica Olbia, where there's a column here, a little railing, and another set of columns here. And this person is here for perspective, to let you see how tall they are. So, we're dealing with, it's a soaring building. And, we have one flight here, a second flight here, and then that thing that's on the top, we have a third story. So it's three stories high. And we're looking at, a massive construction to be able to support all of this weight, which is why we have all of these columns for weight distribution. And so we'll talk about that. Building in the round, we're going to have a bunch of buildings in the round. That's what we're looking at here. Okay. College Board requires AP people that you know this. This is not as good, I think, a floor plan as this one. I think this one's a lot harder to understand, but you come in here. Place where you enter a church is called the narthex. The place where you walk around in a church is called the nave. And the place where the altar is called the apse. So the open area that sometimes has pews in it, or you can stand in it, that's the nave. And this is the apse. Okay. All right. Ready? Papow. All right. So this is standing in the apse, APSE. Here's the altar. You're looking at the entrance, and here's level 1, level 2. Here's just more windows, and then level 3 starts right here. Okay. And this is all mosaic, all tiles, all those little glass tiles to tell a story. And when I say little glass tiles, I mean like the size of your pinky fingernail. Each glass tile is that big. Okay. And so the church is covered with mosaics. They are Old Testament and New Testament stories. They are highly, highly, highly decorated with glass. That's why with gold. That's why there's so many windows, so that they shine. And at the time that Justinian, he's going to be really important in a second. At the time that Justinian becomes emperor of the western portion of the empire, when he becomes emperor, the Western Empire, the Byzantine Empire, is in decline. And Justinian is married to this woman named Theodora. And between the two of them, they figure out how to revitalize the entire Western Empire, and it becomes important again. And Justinian, reunites the Byzantine Empire and connects it to the Roman Empire, and he makes this gigantic, ridiculous empire, and he becomes a really big deal. And so, as a way of showing his power, as a way of showing his importance, as a way of defining himself as a chosen leader that is chosen not only by humans, but also by God, he creates this beautiful church. You're going to look and see those columns, and you're going to go, wait a minute. Oh, sorry. Whoop. You're going to say, wait a minute. Ms. Horman, I've never seen a column like that. You're right, you haven't. That is not a Greek column or a Roman column. It's not either. It's a new style. It's Byzantine columns, like double basket column. They're trying to make the Byzantine art look like its own new thing. And it definitely does. So we are standing from this image behind the altar in the apse, looking out. Okay, behind us, in that little niche right here, behind us in this little niche, the apse, is this. Okay, so it's this beautiful, tall car roof here. This is Christ sitting on top of the earth with the saints, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John with him. Okay. It is, you can see with this picture a little bit how the gold glows, especially up here in this corner. When the light comes in, the light reflects off of everything. And what I want you to see is, I mean, this table is a little higher than hip height. It's maybe, like at your stomach height. So, I mean, this is huge. This is a soaring space. It's giant. And there's all of these pictures, and here's a curved picture here with some angels above it. And on the opposite side, there's another curved picture. So I'm going to go back one. Here's that curved picture we were just looking at with the angels on either side. There's one opposite it. So let's go back and look at it again. So there's that curved picture. Okay. So, this is really not constructed by, Justinian didn't build it, but he commissioned it. And that's an important word, a commission, when you pay someone to make a work of art for you. So he commissions this work of art. And he has them construct this because he wants to inspire faith. He wants to inspire hope. He wants to continue the conversion of pagans to Christianity. He wants to bring more people into the Byzantine Empire. And he wants a building that will feel magnificent and awesome. And when I say awesome, I mean the actual definition of awe, like awe, where you're like, oh my goodness, that is amazing. That is to be in awe. And something that is awesome is that makes you be, I can't believe what I'm looking at. And that is what he wanted to accomplish here. It's in the round, but it's also got some of the early Christian construction in it as well. So Justinian pulled a little bit of inspiration from the Pantheon with the idea that it's round. He pulled a little bit of the original construction from Santa Sabina. It's both new and classical at the same time. I mean, it really is. It's, it's innovative in its use of all of these mosaics of gold, but it's classical in its use of, the columns and the clear story lights. It really is a big deal. And when you want to get across all these stories, at this time period, your options to get across biblical stories, you have two, right? And your two options are fresco or mosaic. And you could fresco all these walls, but they don't. And the reason that they don't fresco all these walls is because frescoes do not reflect the light, and glass mosaic tiles do. And so that is Justinian's push here for why there is so much, because the glass just shines. Okay, so as we're looking at the apse and we're looking at Christ with the four apostles back here, the four writers of the Bible, the four gospel writers, I want you to see this picture right here. There's one here and one directly opposite it. And these are Justinian and Theodora. So here we go. So here's the Emperor Justinian. Okay, here he is hanging out here. He's got a loaf of bread. Okay, she's got a cup of wine. Okay, that's important. So here we have Justinian. His gown is purple. His part of this gown is purple. The decoration is gold. Justinian has a halo selected by God. He's holy. This is the cross of the church. This is the Holy Bible, the gospel of the church, the Bible, the book that would hold the four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it would have been highly decorated. And then here is the incense burner. And so we see, what do we see here? So we see the emperor. We see the church. We see the military. So what we see is that here we have Justinian placed here as the head of the government, surrounded by the church and his advisors and the army. He is the emperor for being in charge of the church, in charge of the people, and in charge of the military. He's in charge of everything. Okay. And you'll see that his shoes are red when everybody else's are white. Like, he's just separated from them. So were really cool in that it's mostly it's symmetrically balanced, but it's asymmetric. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can see this guy peeking out here, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4. But their bodies on this side are wider. They have more stuff. They're more, so they seem to, even though there's more people on this side, it seems to be pretty balanced. Okay. We see again. I'm going to say this again. Look at his halo. He's clearly important, a divine choice. He's going to be, like he's chosen by God. This is the archbishop of the church, of the Byzantine church, Archbishop Maximanus, who is blessing Justinian. Okay, so the archbishop of the church says, yeah, you're our dude. And you're so much our dude that we're going to give you the bread and you can distribute the bread for mass. Okay, so here we see Justinian. He is super important. He is his little guy is posted right here next to the altar. Okay, and so it's really like an important placement. The story is important. He is the embodiment of all of the parts of the Byzantine Empire: the people, the church, the military. And then I want you to see that there are sort of some other things that make this particularly Byzantine. There are some artistic choices that are easily identifiable as Byzantine. Look at their eyes. They all seem to have these very dark circles under their eyes. And sometimes people call them drooping eyelids. Those are Byzantine eyes. If you ever see like something that is Byzantine, they're all going to have those sort of bags under their eyes. They also have what many art historians and art teachers call bread feet. I know that sounds weird, but that's what they're called. They're called bread feet, floating feet. Look at their feet. Okay. Their feet don't seem to be really connected to the ground. We're still missing that perspective that makes us feel like our feet are touching the ground. They just sort of seem to be out there and they don't seem to be very defined. They're just sort of like blue. And so oftentimes we call them floating feet, bread feet, Byzantine feet. Those are definitely Byzantine eyes. Okay. And then we're going to scroll forward and we're going to look at Theodora. Here she has those Byzantine eyes. So do all of her attendants. They all have those sort of floating bread feet. And here she is. She's on the opposite side, facing, their two mosaics are facing each other. It's made to look a little bit like a tapestry or a carpet. And what's important is she is not of royal blood, but she is brilliant. And Justinian marries her and makes her basically his co-partner. And they rule Byzantium, the Byzantine Empire, together. And she is just as important as he is, almost. Notice that Justinian's is symmetrical with him in the center. Hers is not. Okay. There's what would be the center is a little bit open space here. She's just off to the left a little bit. She's still important. She has her important halo. She's got the wine for the mass. Okay. She's got her attendants with her. And she is really important because, she brings the story of Christ and helps to convert the people. And she is bringing the gifts of the mass to the people. And here you see the three magi, the three wise men, bringing their gifts on the bottom of her dress. And so sort of her idea is that she brings, religion and Christ and the gifts to the people. And so that is what you see here. She is participating in the mass, just like Justinian. She is represented by her attendants and members of his government. She is almost as super important as he is. And it's really nice to see a woman treated with such respect. So Justinian builds this, and I want to just, before I switch to the next object, I want to talk about Justinian has this built between 526 and 547. Okay. And it takes a really long time because of all the tiles and stuff like that. Shortly after he has them begin this construction of San Vitale, he has them start another building, probably one of the most famous buildings in the entire world. And I don't say that lightly. While they are building San Vitale, he has his architects, Anthemius of Tralles and Isidorus of Miletus, he has them begin construction of Hagia Sophia. Some people say it Hagia Sophia, some people say it Hagia Sophia. Both are correct. Okay, so both are fine. Here we see buttresses again. Here we see half domes. Okay, this is a full dome. This is a half dome. And the half dome takes the weight. Here's the full dome. The weight comes down, transfers to the half dome. Then the weight comes down again and transfers to this roof. And then the weight comes down the rest of the way down the buttress. It's a way of just distributing weight. Okay, this is in Constantinople, which was Constantinople. Now it's called Istanbul. Okay. And it is that city that sits, half of the city sits in Europe and the other half of the city sits in Asia. Okay. Hagia Sophia means holy wisdom. So this is the Church of Holy Wisdom. And we're looking at bricks and ceramics with stones and mosaics. Okay. So this is what Hagia Sophia would have looked like when it was constructed. Okay. And so I'm just going to have you look at this picture for a minute. And the reason I'm going to show you this picture is in the, when was that it happened? 8th century, 9th century, I think in the 8th or 9th century, there was a battle between during the Crusades, there was a battle between the Christians and the Muslims, and the Muslims took over this area of the world and they turned this into a synagogue. Not a synagogue, a mosque. And so now it has these turrets, yes. These did not always exist here. These are additions. And so I would like you to try to just envision it without the minarets. That's what they're called. They're called minarets. Just had a brain hiccup. So I'd like you to sort of try to envision them for a minute without the minarets on them. So that's what we're looking at. Here we have additions by Islam, but here's what it originally would have looked like. And here we have that dome, half dome, quarter dome, and then down to the buttress. All right. So that's what we're looking at. All right. Let's go inside and see what the inside looks like. All right. So this is your floor plan, which if you're an AP, you're going to have to recognize. And it's super easy because it's a big circle in the center. And then you have, and they're even labeled for you here. You have your little half domes. And your aisle, so your central dome and your half dome, and that half dome helps to distribute that weight. Okay. Again, when we talk about this was the simple exterior. It's not very complicated on the outside with a very beautiful interior. We'll go back to the interior in a minute. This was built as the Christian center of the Byzantine Empire. San Vitale and Ravenna was the center of the Byzantine Empire for Justinian. Like that's where he ruled from for a long time. This was the Christian center of the Byzantine Empire. And architects at this time were more than anything, they were scholars. They studied buildings. And he told them to make something new that was for the glory of God. And it is really it's a central plan. It brings in a bunch of different ideas. The domes are domes become very much a part of the building of this area. It was part of a public works program that Justinian sort of started, kind of like FDR's New Deal, putting people to work and giving people things to do. This that you see here is actually the third Hagia Sophia. The first one and the second one were both made out of wood and burned down. But this is the third one. And this is the third one on the same spot by the same architects. But they finally got it right with the third one here. So we're looking at this. This is centrally planned and rectangular at the same time, because when we look at it, we come in from here. And we do have that long rectangular, feels a little bit like a basilica here, right? But then we have sort of these little side aisles that we can look at from here. So we still have a view of the altar from our side aisles, but most of our worship was going to happen here in this spot, okay, in that rectangular area. It's symmetrical. It's beautiful. The architects, it's awesome when we hear Isidorus's words read to us. He talks about focusing on the mysticism of space and how the soaring height could make you feel small and understand the perfection and the divineness of God. It was meant to be a spiritual space. It was meant to be a contemplative space. It was meant to be a meditative space. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of mosaics. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of relics, all of which were lost when it changed hands. So what you see here is the modern use of Hagia Sophia. I'm sorry, I just hit the mouse and it just went all kinds of crazy. So you see the modern use of Hagia Sophia. And when I say modern use, I mean it is currently in 2020 a museum. It became a museum in 1934. I just found my date. 1435, it became a mosque. So from 537 until 1453. So for 900 years, it was a Catholic church. And then it became a mosque in 1453. And because of where it sits, it was constantly fought over and constantly argued over. And this person wanted it, and that person wanted it, and this church wanted it, and that church wanted it. And in 1934, it became a museum. So what you have to understand about Islam, and we haven't done Islam yet, so we'll get there. But one of the things that you need to understand about Islam is that in mosques, there are not allowed to be any depictions of humans or animals. There can be patterns and flowers and plants and things like that, but no people and no animals. And this area was covered with just acres and acres and acres and acres of mosaics. So when it became a mosque, they covered over most of the they covered over all of the mosaics. And when it became a museum, they began to uncover them. And so that's why it looks like it's in such bad shape, is they're trying to get down to the mosaic underneath. You can see the beautiful clear story here that allows the light to come in. You can see all of the windows here in the clear story that allows the light to come in. You can see right there, that is a beautiful mosaic of Christ. But then you see these, which are these medallions with passages from the Quran on them, because when it became a museum, they left those. And so you can see how they're built. They're wood with a frame in the back. They're kind of really cool that this picture shows you how they were created and attached to the wall. So that's what you're looking at, are these quotes from the Quran. And for size, look down here, look at these lights. Those are very far above people's heads. And those were electrified lights. And then you see all these people down here. The light is meant to feel divine. The light is meant to symbolize perfection. The domes echo our Roman arches. So we have that concept of Roman construction. Here we have colonnades of columns here. So we get this beautiful combination of the old and the new, a beautiful combination of what is comfortable and a new way of doing this, which what I mean by a new way of doing this is most of the mosaics here were gold and glass and black for a very, gave you kind of a warm glow as opposed to just a yellow glow. So I'm going to go forward for a second and see if I have any more pictures. So yeah, here. So this is one of the mosaics they were able to uncover during the time that it was a museum, 1934 to, as of right now, 2020. The reason that I say as of right now, 2020, is the president of Turkey is saying that he wants to turn Hagia Sophia back into a mosque. And so that's why I say, since I'm recording this, if you listen to this in 2023, it could be a mosque again. I don't know. So that's why I say when it is a museum. So this is what the mosaics look like. Lots of gold, but lots of black, lots of brown. It was meant to give a very warm glow, a kind of an amber feel. All right, we're going to talk for a minute about construction. Okay. There's two different ways to build a dome. You can build a dome on pendentives, or you can build a dome on squinches. And you're going to need to know this if you're going to take the AP exam, because they could ask you a question. So pendentives are pointy pendentives from Hagia Sophia, PPP, pointy pendentives from Hagia Sophia. Okay. Pendentives are when the dome sits atop some points that transfer the weight down. Okay. Down, down, down. So I'm going to go back. Here you go. Here's your dome. Here's your pendentive. Here's your dome. And it travels down in this triangle shape. And then the weight finishes coming down this way. So the weight comes down into the pendentive, and comes down this way. All right. So that's a pendentive. There's also a square squinch in Salim, and I'm going to show you in a little bit the Mosque of Salim, and then we'll come back to this. But you need to remember that a pendentive is pointy. The dome sits on a pendentive if it's pointy, and Hagia Sophia or Hagia Sophia is an example of a dome that sits on pendentives, those points that come down and allow the weight to be distributed that way. It's an important distinction on how you construct a dome. Okay. And so the dome is huge. This is a giant dome. I mean, ridiculously large. Look at how small these people are. It's a giant dome. And the weight is distributed through these pendentives and out into the domes, this half dome, and then the quarter domes. I mean, it was really a magnificent construction. It was a magnificent way of building a new thing. And so now we have Hagia Sophia, and it's beautiful. Again, dome, half dome, quarter dome down, dome, squinch down the post. So we're talking about a really important construction vocabulary there. All right, one more Byzantine piece. Ready? This is just talks more about pendentives. We can talk more about that here. You can see a little bit of the mosaic that's trying to come out. Here you can see that dome and that pendentive. And then the pendentive comes down to the pier or that column. All right. One more Byzantine piece. Okay. So this is the Virgin, also called Theotokos. And that word Theotokos means mother of God. That's the Greek word for it. So if you were to ever say, I really want a picture of Theotokos, you're going to see a picture of the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus. So Theotokos and child between Saints Theodore and George. So here's the Virgin Mary, child, Theodore, and George. All right. There's a lot going on here. Let's start with early Byzantine Europe, okay, from the 6th or 7th century. So the 500s to the 600s, somewhere in there. And it says encaustic on wood. I believe this is our first encaustic piece. So let's talk a little bit about what that is. Encaustic is an ancient art method of painting using wax that is heated and colored and then basically burned into the wooden surface. You take the hot wax and you put it on your wooden surface and it burns itself into the wood. And what's interesting about this is you can get these really bold colors with the wax. And that's why you see these really amazing halos on Mary and Theodore and George and the baby Jesus. Because you're dealing with a wood piece that is then covered and then burned with this, the wood. We see some interesting changes in the creation of this piece of art. But I want to talk about something before I talk about that. So this piece is from either the 6th or 7th century. So why do we have it? Well, there's a couple of reasons. I could tell you that we have Hagia Sophia because its dome is amazing. I could tell you that we have San Vitale because its mosaics are amazing. And I can tell you that we have this piece because the fact that it still exists is amazing. So this was created in the 6th or 7th century. In the 8th century, in 700s, there was what is called an iconoclasm, okay? An iconoclasm. An iconoclasm is when basically the church says, all of these works that you did that are icons, they are all blasphemous. And they are the work of the devil. And you are not supposed to, have icons. You're not supposed to worship icons. And so we can't have this. And what they did was they went through, the church went through and just destroyed thousands, literal thousands of icons, because they were not legal. They were blasphemous. They were against the second commandment that says, you shall not worship graven images or whatever. That was the way that the church saw it at the time. And the church was afraid of changing how people worshiped. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I'm going to come back to, okay, icons. What are icons? Whoa, sorry. Icons are not just decorations, okay? Icons are a visual aid for worship and part of the service. It's not necessarily concerned about the resemblance of the subject to its original thing as much as it is about capturing the spirit of that person or the essence of what happened in that moment or the importance of what was going on at the time. It really is about, I'm sorry, let me go one more. I'm sorry. It really is for the Eastern Church. It is about seeing God as being beautiful and that God's creations are beautiful and that to worship God is beautiful. And the idea that happened during the iconoclasm was in 730. The Emperor Leo III said, we can't do this. This is not good. This is blasphemy. And so what happens is from 730 until 787, icons are outlawed. But in 787, the Council of Nicaea says, look, there's a difference between worshiping God and worshiping an object, and we take it back. Your icons are not your icons are not blasphemous. You can keep using them, but it takes a while for the production of icons to come back into use. People were afraid to keep making them again. They were afraid that they were going to be part of another iconoclasm. But what happens is the church begins to understand that the purpose of an icon is to be contemplative. It is to help you focus on that picture and feel your religion and feel your faith and feel your belief and feel the presence of God. That is its purpose. It is a religious devotional object that is almost always portable in size so that people could bring them with them if they had to travel. And they are critical in the Eastern Church, the way of being able to process through their faith. Okay. We're going to look at encaustic for a second. Encaustic is mixing pigments with another medium like eggs and wax, gives it a shine. And we can see that in the halos. And if they had, it looks like there's gold leaf there, but there's not. It comes from that shining wax. So let's go back to the actual picture. Again, you can watch this video if you want to. It's there for you. It shows you how encaustic works. Okay, so here we go. The Virgin Theotokos and child between Saints George and Saints Theodore and George. So when we're looking at it, we see the Theotokos, the Mother of God. We see Theodore and George, who were considered warrior saints, who fought to keep the early Christians safe, and who fought in the name of Christ. We see some things that are clearly Byzantine. Okay, they have their Byzantine drooping eyes. They have their Byzantine red feet. Okay, so we see things that are clearly Byzantine. Their shapes are not well defined. We don't have really good realistic perspective, but we're trying. Okay, we can see that we have the baby Jesus is in front of Mary. We see that Saints Theodore and George are in front of the angels behind them. And I don't know if you can tell, but this little picture right here, this little opening and then this light, that is the hand of God coming in and blessing all of them. Okay. So what's interesting about this piece and why this is here and why it's part of our thing is we see a lot of really cool stuff. And caustic is an amazing medium that allows for sort of that glowing light. Okay, so we got that. We've got the really cool stylized faces of the Byzantine era. We have the really cool existence of these warrior saints, Theodore and George. We have these little angels in the back who are just awestruck by the presence of God. Then we look at our time period, and we are overwhelmed by the idea that this even exists. How lucky we are that it survived the iconoclasm. And because so many pieces were destroyed in the iconoclasm, because there was such a concern about images of the Virgin Mary, this is one of the earliest intentional works created of Mary and Jesus to be like looked at and used in contemplation, as opposed to the one that we saw in the catacombs of Priscilla. So it's rare that this survived. What's also cool, and I'm hoping that you looked at your theme and saw different artists. What's also cool is art historians believe that this was painted by 3 separate artists. That one group of artists did the background and the hand of God. Another group of artists did sort of that midground and the angels and stuff like that. And that the last artist did Mary and the saints, that this was sort of painted in phases. It's a really cool idea of a really cool example, not idea, a really cool example of why art matters. It helps to show time period. It helps to identify important events. It helps to do a lot of things. Okay. There are our icons. All right. Early and middle and late medieval. All right. Merovingian looped fibulae. Why is this in your curriculum? Because it is an amazing example of metal work from this time period. And metal work is a big deal. And being able to work in silver and gold and gems like this is huge. And so what you're looking at is silver and gold and garnets and other stones and a couple of other things that we're going to talk about. It's a really, really cool piece of jewelry. I'm going to go forward just so you can see sort of a close-up of it real quick when it's sitting on its side. So this is pre-restoration. This is post-restoration. Look at how gross it was. Look at how beautiful it is, right? So what you're looking at here is you're looking at I'm hoping that you can see it. It's a bird. Okay. So we have this, it's an eagle. So we have an eagle. Here's his eye. Here's his beak. Here's his eye. Here's his beak. Eye, beak, eye, beak. Okay. There's another one right here. Okay. And another one here, and another one here. And then we have a fish. All right. So the fish is a big, important symbol in Catholicism in the early Christian church. And the fish shows up for a couple of reasons. One, Christ says to the apostles at one point, "I will make you fishers of men." And so that is one of the ways that we are able to understand why the fish is important. But if you've ever driven down the road and you've looked on the back of cars, and you see the symbol for the Jesus fish. The reason for that is it was a Greek symbol, and it comes basically from the concept of that the fish, the letters of the word ichthys, the fish, represent the sentences of Jesus Christ, Son of God, is the Savior. And so you get like the letters of ichthys, which is the fish, is iota, which means Jesus, chi, which means anointed one, theta, which means God, and upsilon, which means son. So Jesus is the anointed son of God, and then you get sigma, which means savior. So ichthys, fish, is a big deal. And so you'll often see fish as religious symbols in early Christianity. Now, why are there eagles? Well, I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I wanted you to really see it first. So metalwork, super important metalwork. You're going to see a bunch of other metalwork pieces, and animals in art, which we've already seen a bunch of animals in art. Our cute little ambum stone, just my favorite. All right, so let's come back here. So early medieval, mid 6th century, they're only 4 inches high. They're very small. And what a fibulae is basically it is a little clasp that holds on a robe. It's like a military brooch or a grave marker brooch, or like something that, like if you were buried, that it would have held your burial cloth on you, or if you were in the wars, it would hold your robe together. Why it's important is it was found in Jouy-le-Camp in France. France at this time was becoming mostly Christian, but there were also non-Christian Celts, Vikings. And so what's interesting here is we have, we're looking at, it has Christian imagery, it has Celtic imagery, it has barbarian imagery. That's what they called like the Vikings and stuff like that. So we're looking at a bunch of different sort of pieces of iconography that are all put together at the same time. They believed that this was a grave good for someone that would have been probably not fully Christian. It's very similar to Celtic work. Merovingian is that area near France and Germany. And they're created in pairs to hold things together, and it's lots of really cool stuff. We know that the person who owned this and was buried with this was important, like had to be. Look at how fancy schmancy they are. And we see that this is sort of right at the brink of the fall of Rome. Rome is about to fall. Byzantines are coming in. There's just going to be wars and all kinds of craziness soon. This is just before what people horrifically call the Dark Ages. Please don't call it the Dark Ages. It's you're looking at the late medieval. And the reason that we have the late medieval / Dark Ages is because we ended up with the Black Plague, and we lost a lot of possible moving forward in time because of terrible things that happened at that time period. But this is a really great sample of what was going on at the time in metalwork, and it's impressive. So you have the eagles, you have the fish. So we have I'm going to use that word again, the zoomorphic images. Okay, you have what is called chasing, chasing. And that is when you make patterns in metal using a tool or hammering in with a surface into the surface with a tool. So you have some chasing. I'm going to go to the next picture so you can see a little better. So like when you get the pattern here, then you have what's called cloisonne. Whoa, big word. I'm going to spell it for you. Cloisonne with a little accent over the last E. And cloisonne is basically enamel work, paint work that is done in colored areas, in areas that are used to color, enamel work to color in areas between metal bands. So this fish is cloisonne. You use little pieces of metal to separate it into these different areas, and then you paint inside them, and that's cloisonne. Okay. So they're not like the end all be all of the most important art objects of all time, but they're really good at showing what was going on in decorative arts at the time. And while we're looking at decorative arts, and this is going to be our next image, I'm not going to do it today in this video, but look at the imagery here on this Fibulae, and then look at the imagery here on this book that is done a little bit after that. Okay, so the work that we see in this brooch is then transferred into the work that we see in illuminated manuscripts a little bit later. Okay, so that is the end of our video today. Working our way through, now we've worked our way through Byzantine, and we're working our way through early and late medieval, and I will see you again next time.